All right, everyone. Hydrogen Hillary Clinton, who also, by the way, this shows her track record. She thought that Trump was going to completely fail on the Korea issue. Huge news later, but that's got to be the final video of the day on that. Clinton is saying that Trump attacks the free press. He's an enemy of the freedom of the press. He goes after the media and stuff. Much like with every other time this has been claimed, we have to differentiate between the press as a corporate group of cable outlets, the press as it is usually described by a politician, I wonder why, and the press in its actuality, which is anyone undergoing the activities of the press. Right now I am undergoing one of the activities of the press. I am disseminating information to people through a communications medium other than I'm appearing in person. It doesn't have to be a book. In the most literal sense, it refers to the printing press. That just covers the dissemination of information through mediums other than the strictly verbal and personal. This is the verbal and impersonal. Literature is impersonal. It's also technically nonverbal. You're not speaking to anybody. Music is one of those mediums. The First Amendment protects things that are not explicitly speech, specifically because of that other component of the First Amendment, the rights of the press. It's any dissemination of information. So Clinton says Trump is attacking the press. Now, my question for her would be, what about that time Feinstein said that bloggers should face jail sentences or fines and be regulated because blogging wasn't an activity of the press? Because they weren't actual members of the press, because they didn't have a journalism degree and didn't belong to a cable firm or a major newspaper. What about that time? Or what about all the times that you yourself have attacked the press for derailing your campaign? It's a vast conspiracy. The press corps doesn't like me because I'm acerbic, which, may be true at this point considering what the New York Times has been writing regularly. But then I'm looking at the DNC email leaks, which, it's funny because the DNC is also going after the press when it sues WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks is part of the press. It's just not part of the corporate press. Well, it's a business, but it's not really a multinational firm like a CNN. Then we find, if we look through those emails, lo and behold, what's happened? Oh, that's right, the Clinton campaign, if not Clinton herself, and the DNC were openly coordinating with both MSNBC and CNN to give favorable coverage to the Clinton campaign, to canvass things in a certain way, to help to dumb down Sanders, and then also to go after Trump once she was coronated as the obvious nominee, which was, always going to be the case. Yes, Martin O'Malley for president. He's going to talk about, 100% green by 2050 or whatever the fuck was his campaign message. It's the only thing he was ever known for. I'm sure he was a totally viable candidate. Yeah, just like Bernie Sanders, okay, a socialist in his mid-70s, he's going to become the next president. I don't think so. Sorry, the DNC shafted him. And it was obvious that they were going to because his opponent was Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton doesn't understand what she's talking about. The media has colluded with political parties. I mean the corporate media. What you're afraid of, therefore, really, if you're, a neoliberal or a neocon, if you're anywhere between a McCain and a John Kerry, your greatest fear is basically people like me taking over the communication era. They're terrified. Why do you think they're constantly trying to censor any hard-hitting commentary? Anything slightly edgy, the stuff that was like, it's like mundane on the internet 5 years ago, all of a sudden is a major problem. So essentially, an ad firm is very, very worried if their ads are appearing on an edgy YouTube video where the person says hell or damn it, but they're not concerned whatsoever about all the police chases and all the gory war footage on CNN. That's just fine. GM doesn't have a problem with it. A Nike doesn't have a problem with it. Monster doesn't have a problem with it. None of these groups care. Sears and if they still exist in a few years, Walmart and Target, they don't really care. It's just like they're really for equality over here, but then they'll install suicide nets in their Chinese factory subsidiaries. So, fucking cry me a river. Corporations don't have morality. Neither, by the way, do corporations that call themselves members of the media. Now, there is an inalienable right for Americans to form such a corporation. Yes, a person can form a business conglomerate, a multinational, and then, spew out propaganda and call it news. There's no law against propaganda being utilized, by the way. The government's not, banned anymore. Obama tore up the regulation that kept the government from buying propaganda on groups like CNN. He got rid of that. I wonder why. It's because of the information wars as they are. By the way, It probably has more to do with combating foreign competitors than anything else. It's actually not that shifty when you really think about the ramifications and the effectiveness of propaganda, maybe. It allows us to do to Russia what Russia supposedly did to us, which is buy Facebook ads and things like that. But they're really afraid of the independent media. And the independent media now is bigger than the legacy media. The legacy media still has more power in the form of more money. However, the independent media at this point probably has a bigger audience, and it's certainly a younger and growing audience as opposed to an older and shrinking audience. We are winning. Clinton and her ilk will never attack CNN. They will never attack MSNBC. They will never attack billion-dollar corporations that disseminate fake news. And a lot of it is outright fake. A lot of it is little more than bias, spin, and analysis. It's not even realistic commentary. A lot of it's outright propaganda. These companies are wealthy and multinational, and they're run by wealthy multinational individuals. So what kind of things do you think that they're going to put forth in the news? Is it going to be stuff that's against multinational corporations? Do you think that it's actually going to attempt to structure a tax code in such a way that people who make more and offshore their money are actually going to pay more? Or do you think that their idea of going after the rich is screwing some doctor or some lawyer who ultimately is peanuts next to one of these CEOs and make 100 times the salary easily, and plus their investments in the Caymans with Mitt Romney or the Bush family or the Clintons? Ultimately, there's no independent media on television. There's no independent media on demand. There's no independent media on terrestrial radio, unless you go to the AM dial and you can find some local stations or something that manage to get in there and pay the massive regulatory fees. And they can't even have live callers because they'll get sued by the FCC. You have to go on the internet, or you have to go onto satellite radio, or you have to use fucking shortwave if you want to hear actual independent commentary. That's where you have to go. Mostly that means the internet. The average person's not setting up a shortwave broadcast. It's very interesting. It can be fun. I think Review Broad does a shortwave broadcast, and it's very cool, but it's not exactly the greatest way to reach large groups of people, especially since you can't actually, document the traffic that you're getting necessarily. But yeah, there's the thing. Clinton and her ilk, they're the ones that have been attacking like YouTubers. They're like, the extremism is a problem, which it isn't. On YouTube or elsewhere, and trying to shut people up. They're doing it for fiscal reasons and for political reasons. They don't actually care. They don't actually think that it's a moral problem or an ethical problem or something. What they think is it's a money problem. Oh shit, these independent commentators generally oppose multinational sort of stuff because they don't derive any benefit from it. So what's good for some billionaire multinational corporation that has roots in 5 or 6 different countries and has slush funds to donate to political campaigns in all of them to get around election finance laws? That's what's good for them probably doesn't benefit me. It probably screws me, honestly, because I'm become one of their competitors in the communication era. Who would have thought? It's like a David and Goliath situation. That's really what it boils down to. The thing, of course, is there are many hundreds of thousands of Davids and only a few dozen actual Goliaths. Which is what they're afraid of, which is why they're constantly trying to censor and harass and defame. Ultimately, the way in which some of these corporations behave, if they were individuals rather than fake individuals, which is corporations. Corporations are not people, my friend. I'm sorry. Mitt Romney is totally wrong. If they were individuals, they'd probably get banned off a lot of platforms for fucking harassing people and for defaming them. They'd be deplatformed. They'd be considered the most scummy individuals. Oh yeah, I put out a lot of worthless content that fewer and fewer people give a damn about. And it was pointed out last night in the wake of by Ben from the Drunken Peasants. It's pointed out that CNN and all of these groups, they've skyrocketed in their sub-counts and stuff in the wake of Adpocalypse. Yes, absolutely, because the algorithmic shifts that have been put into place favor priority creators over people like myself who are actually independent. Therefore, people like myself, we're still growing. It's just smaller compared to what it used to be. Our main advantage is there's a hell of a lot more of us, and that ultimately, not a whole lot of people trust CNN. A lot of those people that are subscribing mainly to downrate things, which is good. They should. Because none of it's worth watching. But why would they want to watch it anyway? It's basically cable news on YouTube. That's great, but it's still the same boring G-rated cable news that they get fined by the FCC if they say damn. There's your problem. There's why they're being outcompeted. That's why nobody cares about them. That's about all. Peace out.